Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're celebrating International Women's Day with an extraordinary panel of inspiring women. I'm thrilled to guide you through a captivating discussion where we'll explore our inspirations, celebrate our victories, and discuss the legacies we're eager to leave behind, but not just yet. Join us as we embark on a journey filled with insights, empowerment, and the unique experiences of these remarkable women. Welcome to a celebration of women's achievements and the power of their voices on this special episode of the Human Side of Business podcast. Okay, so we're jumping right into this special episode today. I'd like us to discuss our leadership stories from basically a Coles Note perspective. So feel free, everyone, to unmute your mics. We're going to dive in.
So leadership story, that's kind of funny because for the first 4 years, 3.5 years of my operation, it was just myself and sort of an admin person, the person who I could just give everything to, and I headed everything, the client relationships. And in year 4, all of a sudden I have 7, 8 people. I was like, oh my God, I'm a leader now. So it really happened fast and not by accident, but I hadn't really considered that piece. So I'm really having to shift my thought process and how I do things and implement structure and strategies and processes that I hadn't considered. So I'm kind of working backwards because we're in it and I didn't plan for it whatsoever. So I'm having a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it because I kind of like to just put my head down and go and do things my way and don't understand why everybody doesn't just do them my way. Which we're truly getting there, and it starts with me entirely. So I've alleviated some of the pressure that I was putting on people for not just knowing what I expected and showing up and doing exactly what I thought they should know they should do. I really had to work on myself a lot in the last 6 months to really get that across and make them feel safe at work and just figure that piece out. And it starts with me, but it took me a minute to really get that part of it because I was already in it before I realized that that's what I was doing.
Thank you, Steph. That's a great share.
I'll jump in. My story is very similar. I always thought that being on my own meant I would be the one-woman show, and it was that for a little while. I had never had a team prior to going on my own, and we grew very rapidly, especially during COVID on the career strategy side of the business. And then when hiring started to be a factor again, it was a lot of 18-hour days that just weren't sustainable long term. So I'm finding my way, stumbling in the light and the dark, quite often trying to figure out how to manage different personalities and how to build leadership skills in myself, but also give my team the coaching and support that they need. So I would, echo the same sentiment that for the last 6 to 9 months, it has been a lot more learning on me, and starting with me and having the accountability and really learning that even though I'm someone who always thought I could have difficult conversations, finding that does not come as naturally as what I thought it did.
Amazing, Jen.
I'll jump in there. I actually found myself in a leadership role from the time I was a child. Basically jumped into things like organizing basketball tournaments in junior high and different events of bringing people together and facilitating them, which meant bringing everyone and their tasks together in an efficient manner. When I moved on, I continued to coach sports teams and work through different organizations through volunteering. And then when I transitioned to the corporate roles, I ended up in positions that were new positions to the companies that I worked with, or ones that were in bad spaces already, and was able to find efficiencies and just naturally, work together to make these teams work together. I really loved that, and then found that there was a need for a fractional piece of this. Like Stephanie said, I watched so many people with amazing visions, but you have to wear so many hats as an entrepreneur or a business leader that an objective opinion and objective person who has the time to sit down and go through your tasks was really needed. So I love it now that I'm working with all different levels of the organization, because it's very important that it can't just be the leaders, it has to go through. And that way you work with the entire organization and bringing the leadership through for all of them. So I really love that now, because I can go into that space and help them out and help them work together and find those systems to find the efficiencies and make everybody's day better. And it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Shar.
Darlene, I love that. I'm going to step in here. I call that Pandora's box of leadership. So when you walk into an organization and asking them, okay, I'm going to be opening up Pandora's box here. Are you ready for what's going to come out? So from my perspective, I'm like you. I've been in leadership my whole life. There's nothing quite like running 254 events simultaneously with over 1,000 staff to kind of make you realize what leadership is about. My background comes from event management originally, and from there I took my master's in leadership, which I've kind of gone from the corporate world over to the individual world after doing my time there. And from the master's in leadership, I learned about coaching, and that really became where my passion drew from. As I said, I work with women transitioning, and that question of, I could never do that. How would I get there? And having had a corporate background and working from that perspective, there are other ways of addressing what matters to you and where your fears are. So for me, I come from the corporate background and leadership and tons of volunteer work to now working with individuals and helping them make that step forward. And as a leadership trainer, the Pandora's box, that's just the most brilliant one.
Yeah, similar to Charlene and Deb. Like, I think as a kid, I was a kid leader in ways that I didn't quite anticipate would factor into my adult life, but always volunteered for the positions that people didn't want. And somehow like that seemed to wend my way into my adulthood. Also coming from a background in education where I taught in schools for 20 years, I was a careful observer of the pendulum swings in education and just kind of seeing how leaders navigated those big shifts in culture, in systems, in initiative. And when I became a leader, I thought about, how do I get out of that pendulum and upend the status quo by being a different kind of leader who isn't just transactional, but who really thinks about the processes and human-centered elements of leadership that can really support real change, but also center the dignity of every person I worked with. And consequently, I realized I was kind of decent at it, and that was cool. And so when I left schools entirely and started my business 5 years ago, I wanted to give back, to take what I intuitively knew and to attach some theoretical underpinnings and research to it and support leaders in their current practice and transforming their schools and cultures. So that's where I'm at now, is engaging in that kind of transformational work with other leaders while also learning a lot myself along the way, and keeping myself humble in the process.
Inspiring.
So it's interesting that this question was posed. So I'm going to go way back into high school, way back in high school. And it's in all the stories I'm going to be mentioning is that women sought me out. I never kind of raised my hand and said, oh, I'd like to be a leader. They sought me out. So I think that they saw something, my strengths, my character. So high school, it was the drama teacher, Juliana, I want you to direct Macbeth. Are you talking to me, Macbeth? I mean, it was one of those kind of things, getting the people together. So that was very, very cool. And just one story from corporate America, I was chosen to be a self-managed coach. So taking this team of wonderful people, a business office, how they can direct the business operations over the teller, and that was very cool. Since I'm out of corporate America, I am part of the League of Women Voters. Once again, another woman sought me out. Juliana, I want you to be the director of voter services. Can you get together 4 local high schools and see if you can get and mobilize our young voters? So right now I've got 4 teams working with me in April and maybe before they go on spring break to build these young people, young women. I think I've got some boys there too, but to really kind of help them to mobilize their schoolmates to help them be voters as well. So that is my story. But I'm constantly being tapped on the shoulder to help organizations, and I really do enjoy it a lot.
That's beautiful.
So my leadership journey, like many of you mentioned, started from being a kid. I was the oldest of 4 girls, so naturally that just put me into a leadership position to fight to get a seat at the table. And I think from there, maybe it's also being a Virgo, I just liked organizing things. So I was finding myself organizing, volunteering in high school, student council. Then I had to know what I needed to be. So it stemmed from my background as a clinical dietitian and taking leadership opportunities as a dietitian amongst our nutrition group, and then went into being a patient care manager where I was overseeing, a bunch of the cardiac clinics at the hospital here in Vancouver, St. Paul's. And then moving from there, thinking, I don't want to just be a dietitian. I feel like there's more that I want to contribute. There's more impact I can have besides working with patients one-on-one. So then I was fortunate enough to go into a patient care manager position after being a clinical dietitian for 10 years, where then I was supervising the clinics and looking over, I think it was like 100 staff direct reports. And then from there, I went into a change management and communications position, working on a project within a number of the health authorities here, and then which led to my current role overseeing culture and communications amongst this huge department where it's a dream job in terms of I have a lot of influence, but I don't necessarily have authority. I don't have to be responsible for a budget or any performance management. So it's been a lot of fun and a lot of creativity. And so I think with leadership, it's not even just about the position you hold, it's how you show up in everything you do. Because none of us have any titles and we can still be leaders. And I've found that when you're a leader, it naturally shows up in every part of your life. And so it's been great hearing about everyone's journeys. So
if I could build on that, similar to what a lot of people said, I think as a kid, you started picking up things, whether it was sports teams or universities or summer jobs. I had this kind of natural inclination to show up into positions that inevitably led to leadership. But I think, if I could echo what Jen and Stephanie were talking about, after my MBA, I found myself at 29, part of a leadership team launching internet banking across Canada, and then went into to run other different business units at pretty big scale. And the thing that I wasn't prepared for, even though I'd had all these leadership positions in high school and in university, was what needed to shift in me to be able to show up as a leader. And that was, at 29 and 30, I was literally like learning it on the ground as I had teams of 50 and 60, 70 people kind of reporting into me and realizing I can't do this all by myself. That's not humanly possible anymore. And I need to figure out what needs to shift for me as a leader. And so I'm really resonating with, what I'm hearing around the room of that part of it so much is about like the choices that we're going to make as leaders, about how we show up and how we lead other people, and then what the cascading effect that is for the people that we work with.
Well said, Mal. Thank you for sharing.
Like many others, I think I was born a leader, and it showed up. I was never a follower as a child or teen or through my adult life, and I think I've come by that naturally on both sides of the family, especially as the great-great-granddaughter of First Nations Chief Sharbet. And when I think of it professionally, my first leadership role was a volunteer position.
Mm-hmm.
And just inspired by my aunt who had multiple sclerosis, I volunteered on the board of directors for the local MS Society. And I was the director of affirmative action for 4 years. And then following that within the work realm, worked my way up the line into management and had various leadership positions, including some at the regional command headquarters level. I was working for national defense as a civilian and human resources professional. So there I was, got it into the regional command headquarters office, also at the corporate level in national defense headquarters. And then I did some groundbreaking ice ceiling bashing when I was appointed to two positions as the first woman civilian head of HR at 2 military bases. And so it was challenging back then in terms of like my role models in leadership were men and military men at work. However, my dear aunt who had MS was a role model as a leader, and she was the first woman in politics locally, so I had her to draw on. And when I exited the government, I opened my business. So I'm celebrating 22 years in leadership within my own business as the CEO, founder, and owner of Morningstar Center for Engagement. And can I just share? It's in Kingston. It's located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat people. And I offer leadership development, as Ange said, and professional coach development. And in that realm, I've been acknowledged by the International Coaching Federation as a thought leader on coaching competencies. So, naturally, the leadership's there through somewhat in the workplace, more so through my aunt and other women and men in the family. I honed leadership skills, and my sense is I learned to bring humanity and humility to the workplace, and I have a passion for helping facilitate that in leaders and teams.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad that you said that, Carolyn. As I was thinking about inspiration and female leaders for today, I think we probably all came from businesses and corporate worlds and stuff where it was men in the positions that we went into, and it was men that had the leadership positions. So I was saying to myself, oh, I actually had a fight to prove myself. I don't know if who was inspiring me from a women's perspective in that actual role. And in the roles that I've been in, it was never a woman leader in that role, but there was lots of women leaders in different functions that I pulled from, and especially in the family settings, the leaders of our family, the leaders of the people that brought us together. There's a lot to be said for what the females did in a family role of aunts and things like that, and to teach gratitude, and the humility piece of it is massive. There's lots of famous people I could run from, and people in this room that I've watched grow that are inspiring, but it's a tough go when you had to basically just prove yourself against what those roles were going through, and instead of being a man that was just born into the leadership piece of it. So I'm glad I resonate with that highly. I'm glad someone else felt that way.
Sure. It's so funny you should say that, because we always hear about the great man theory. What I love about young women today is they can now have the great woman theory. So the great woman leader to which to latch upon and say, this is a woman who inspires me. This is a woman who has shown me that I can be more than I am. So I'm in complete agreement with you on that.
Yes, I think the new generation has something different to look forward to than we did. So it's very exciting.
Hearing that, I have never really put it in perspective like that. I worked for a female leader who actually was my mom for a very long time. Excuse me. And now when I do stuff inside my business, I take my 9-year-old daughter with me. Like I'll take her out of school for the day and bring her. So she's, whether we were doing like branding videos or a branding shoot, and then she's seeing, and I just has so happened that it's been all women that I've been doing that with. And so she can see so many of the different dynamics of options that are available to her, and like women in really powerful positions. And so we skip school a lot of the time, and I take her with me so that she can see that. So to your point, like she's not going to know that it's only ever been kind of one gender or another. She's going to actually probably see that it's all women most of the time.
Jen, what I love about that story, if I can interject, is that like the role modeling you're doing for your daughters. When I was in high school, I watched my mother go back to university, and she would study at the dining room table next to me while I was doing my high school, and got her university credit at the same time that I graduated from high school. And I watched her at 40 start her own business. And it was something for me when I walked away from corporate and decided after I raised a few kids that I wanted to come back in. I actually thought back to that experience of watching her restart a career at 40, at 42. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I can do that, even though I'm in my late 40s. Like, why not? Because I had already seen someone who had role modeled it for me of what that looked like. Mm-hmm. So just acknowledging the gift that you're giving her.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. And I started my company. I think I was turning 45 in 2020.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember that
time.
Time.
Yeah. Yeah, Ange and I have lots of stories from sitting at a dining room table and putting those things together, right? But I think, I think when it comes to women or young women, not necessarily nine, but a bit older, one of the things that I've heard people saying is, they none of them want to really know what they want to do with their lives. And there's, there is a lot of options. Like I see that very often. But I think what the great thing is that we're seeing that they probably aren't going to tolerate things that we did at that age.
Absolutely.
When it comes to options, they're not going to stay in toxic jobs longer. They're not going to do jobs they don't like. They're going to know it's okay to pivot versus picking a career and sticking with it for a million years. And so I think, we're really setting them up to have such an amazing foundation and success, but like to really own their voices from a really young age, at least in my house anyway.
And mine as well too.
I love that, Jen. And, it spurred up a memory of in our household. My dad was kind of the natural leader. And he told me, at a time when way back when, where for women, it was kind of like, you could be a nurse, you could be a teacher, which is fabulous. However, very pigeonholing in terms of what a woman can do. And my dad was saying, if you want to be the Prime Minister of Canada, Carolyn, you can do it, Meanwhile, my mom was more passive. And so then once I got into a leadership role, what was really interesting, because I was like a hamster on the wheel, and I'm sure most can identify with that, the busyness, whatever. And I got caught up in that rat race to some degree, instead of not feeling totally comfortable owning my voice and my truth. And my dear mom pulled me aside. And at one point she was offered a leadership position. And I said to her, wow, what's happening when you're going to take it? She said, I'm not taking it. Not worth it. I've looked at the scope. I've looked at what's involved. Financially, the headaches. No, not for me. I'll wait for another. And so it was a lovely balance of the professional, and you can do anything you can want to, and bringing balance. My mom bringing balance. And just because you can doesn't mean you have to, or you should.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
So many epiphanies coming up. And oftentimes when I was growing up thinking about leadership and working for a lot of male dominated leaders, feeling like I didn't fit, I felt like that there was something wrong with me. And, having a strong woman influence my mom, and a few of us know my mom and what she's like, she was amazing. She is amazing because she always showed a humbled way in which you can lead, and that you don't need to die on every single hill. You don't have to be righteous about every single topic. And watching how she interacts with my dad has always felt like the strong leader, but I know that my mom is the guiding light behind him. And being able to take from a lot of her attributes moving forward has been phenomenal. And piggybacking off of what Jen is saying, it's very important to me as a leader that we look at things more from an empathetic perspective or emotional intelligence perspective to carry that to leadership, because it's not so much, for me anyways, it's not so much about gender in leadership. I believe in equality. And what I do strongly believe is that the way that we've done things in past isn't working for many now. And I strongly feel that when it comes to leadership, it's ensuring that individuals understand who they are as a leader first, and where they're jumping off from, and what are their pain points, and what are their triggers, and how are they impacting their people. And oftentimes when I speak with leaders, especially over the past 4 years, when I ask them the question as to what is your leadership why, or what type of leader are you, or even, how do you know how you're impacting your team members? Those 3 questions are super tough for leaders. And I strongly believe that especially the women in this room have the capabilities to be able to distill those things in generations to come.
And when I look at the background of everyone kind of been in my coaching sessions, I always love to have some kind of themes. So Ange, I look at your bookshelf behind you, and I think of my 2 strongest women in my life has been my mother, who died very young at 57, and my mother-in-law. So both of those strong women were caring, supportive, but they were divine order. Everything has a reason. And also is they pushed me a little bit. No, you can do that. No, apply for that. That I didn't think that I could. So when I look at your bookshelf right there, we're holding Julianne up to be the person that I am. So I want to share.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Anne-Marie, jump in the conversation. Help us understand when it comes to leadership. How do you inspire others to be strong leaders?
So I would say my mom is my person. She was a quiet leader.
Yeah.
I'm from a family that was military background, my dad, but she was the quiet leader. So I will say she still inspires me to be a better leader just by that role model. She used to say, if you're going to, whatever age I was, to be a leader, you need to motivate people forward, whether I was trying to figure out something in second grade or in high school or as a, new mom or a new wife or whatever life brought next. She really felt that I had to be a role model. And she had this thing, she was a quilter. And she used to, I can remember her sitting me down and giving me a talk. So she still is my inspiration, but she used to, she would say, pick that fabric or that thread. And she used to tell me, you need to have a big vision of yourself in this world. So each fabric, each piece will come together. And that's what she told me your life will be. So I attribute that to leadership, even now.
That's beautiful.
And then I will also say my business, and Carolyn knows the story, if I have a quick minute.
Of course.
She has passed. And in the beginning of COVID, I didn't, my son was in New York in a group home and it was a little crazy. And she doesn't appear to me in my dreams, but she did appear to me in a dream. And all she kept saying was coach to capacity. So I got up and I was so upset the dream was over. And I spent days trying to figure out what she was telling me, because as mom would tell me some, sign. And I looked for days, I couldn't find it. And it ended up that this was open. The name was open for a business. And I named my business Coach to Capacity. So I feel like she still leads me and inspires me from afar. And I think it's just listening when you have those moments. And that happens to any women that we meet. It's just, she would say, listen to each person that you meet and look for fairness and look for the bigger picture. So
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. What a story. Everyone, what do we think about when it comes to the influences that we have on the next women leaders coming up? What type of, attributes or core competencies or skill sets do we want to really ensure that, our future successor women have in tow with them that maybe we didn't have?
Humility and curiosity are huge. Like you really, those are two things that are going to get you to grow and understand and help others. It's massive to make sure that you're humble and that you ask the questions and keep learning.
And I'm going to add to that reflection, right? So my mom would tell me, you're going to make mistakes. Just be honest when you make them and share with others that you weren't the best at whatever that was. So I think reflecting on that we do make mistakes. It's okay. That's how you'll grow, actually.
I'd add a few more to the mix. I think what I call expansive integrated listening. Having the capacity to not just kind of do that me or focus listening, but that's global listening. I think is a huge undervalued skill as a leader. I would also say, in addition to humility, is a cultural humility, just thinking about what are all the identities, values, backgrounds, habits, and sort of this ever-increasing definition of what it means to be human, and to be really sensitive to, and also sort of expansive in our own thinking about how do we as leaders model the practices we want to see, by virtue of how we show up.
Lori, I completely agree with you. I always say that listen more than you talk. And so when I work with younger women, I'll tell them, come to me with your problem and come to me with a solution that you think will solve this problem. And then together we'll work through how this could work or where your speed bumps will be. So it encourages critical thinking, but it also encourages us to listen without coming up with solutions for them, and for them to build that intrinsically within themselves.
I like the build on that. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Being able to quiet the noise and listen to your gut. And I don't know how we hone that, because I think we probably all still turn away from that sometimes because of, our surroundings or the people at the table or what have you. But I always I want my kids to, and especially my daughter, be really confident and be able to take that out into the world, but also know that everything has a solution. Right. And be solutions focused, not focused on the problem, but what's the solution and where can you add value and create impact, and be confident in, hey, here's a solution we should try. And if it doesn't work, we fail forward, and that's great. I've been doing that for the last 4 years, like learning every day as I've been trying to figure out how to go from the girl at the dining room table to now a team of 6, right? From that perspective. So I think if we can teach confidence or instill confidence, and then also be, really open to, be solutions focused, because there's a solution for everything. And it might be, 10 different ways that you try it, but not to see problems as, the be all to end all, because I think we sometimes get stuck on the negativity loop, and that doesn't really get us anywhere.
Jen, I'll add on to that. I'm talking about the confidence, and as well, others have mentioned curiosity. And I think for me, just really thinking about with the next generation and the whole explosion of social media, it's really instilling for women is really shining their light and basking in each person's brilliance, as we think of each of us in our roles and the ripples that we can impact, and really instilling that for every single person, whatever gender you are, is that each have our light. And having that confidence from within, that it can't be from the outside, it's got to be from within. And so really, and I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I can see the impacts of social media, COVID, the peer group, and thinking there's such a movement now with moving that forward, the momentum of that shining your light and just owning it. It's even just from taking a compliment, right? How many of us just shy away, someone gives us a compliment, but it's owning that, yes, we are powerful and amazing, and we are strong, and we have all the solutions within us, which I think among this group of women, with our coaching mindset, we have that impact for others to share that and to inspire other women to really own their own brilliance.
Oh, thanks so much, Melody, for that. It's what sparked up for me was owning and celebrating beautiful you, and trusting yourself. That's part of the message, and honoring a voice. Listen and honor your voice. Speak up, speak out, speak your truth.
Surround yourself with people that support you, and that changes all the way through life, right? So even this group are people we've met through another woman. So I think because we've all been in those roles that you go home and then you're going to take care of family life, but you still need people outside of that world to then support you as you, maybe it's a transition you're navigating, surround with people who support you.
I'm going to add a contra to that, Anne-Marie. I think we also have to surround ourselves with one person who doesn't like us. Yes. Because that person will tell us the truth, that cognitive dissonance will break cognitive dissonance. So we'll stop to think we always know everything and stop to look at, maybe there's another perspective. Because that person isn't going to cheerlead you, but that person is, I'm not saying they're your best buddy, but having a counter thought to you only helps build your growth and development, that curiosity side that we've been speaking about.
And absolutely, like that group, then even in that challenges you, right? So in your support group, you're gonna have people that say, I don't know,
Yeah, that's exactly
it. And sometimes those are people who know you and also can say, let's think of how you might have done that in another way. But I think
every woman needs that.
Right? Whether you're new as a mom or a wife or not being married, you just need a woman that says it's going to be fine, and support you while challenging you at the same time.
What I'm hearing with some undertones there, and in my experience, especially with younger females in coaching, is confidence. That's the primary thing that comes up for me. So it's really looking under that waterline to ensure that you know who you are as a leader, and you also know that you matter. And regardless of if your opinion or your approach is much different from anybody else's, maybe you're onto something, and test it, try things, take some risks. And, pointing back to Jen's words, you want to fail forward for sure. And to be able to do those types of things, you really, really need to have a strong sense of who you are and your own confidence.
I like that too. And I think one of the things, and again, going back to being a mom in this situation, is I saw something online a long time ago where it said, yes, you tell your kids that you're proud of them, but do you ask them if they're proud of themselves so that they don't seek external validation. So I think I've been using that now for probably the last 2 years. And so Ange knows me personally quite well. And My daughter struggled with anxiety significantly, especially through COVID, to the point of like, I'm sitting in the parking lot at school, so she'll stay in school. And as we got to a point that we would get further from those things and she would make it through a full day and then I could leave, I would say, like, are you proud of yourself? And if you are, then you're not seeking the external validation that I'm going to give, even though I'm proud of you. Like, I would start with that first. And I think that also inspires confidence, but also internal validation to speak your mind and share your ideas. Because we start with that. And like, that's actually been a game changer for me as a parent, not just necessarily a leader or a woman, but like from a parenting perspective.
That's a valid point and so strong, Jen. Thank you for sharing.
Women have always collaborated really well. And I think for the next generation of women, it's continuing to lean into that collaboration. I think about that in terms of systemic coaching. A lot of the challenges that we're facing are too complicated and complex, but women have this natural affinity, and I notice it in the work I do, of wanting to collaborate and being willing to say, like, let's come together. What are your ideas? How does that work? And it becomes this generative dialogue. And I think an encouragement I'd have for women going forward, younger women, is continue to lean into your network, build that collaboration engine around you, so that you can tackle the things that look messy and ugly and are hard. And that's your brain trust that you go to all the time.
That leads into that old adage of, if you can't carry it right now, the women around you will carry it for you until you're ready to carry it yourself.
That's funny. I like literally have the exact same sort of setup as Jen right now. I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I'm doing the same thing with instilling the pieces in her that I felt I needed to work on as I grew: confidence, patience, self-esteem, self-worth, like really drilling that and working on that like super consciously in our household. Taking her to any opportunities that I get that welcome her to see the same things. I grew up in a household without my dad, and she has the luxury of growing up in a household with her dad. And I see the challenges that I had aren't going to be the same challenges she's going to have, which are really interesting, because I think growing up without my dad in the house, that's where like the ambition and the work ethic and the drive, watching my mom have to be two parents, came from, where I see, she has the luxury. I call it the luxury because to me, it's, one of the biggest accomplishments of my life is making sure that my kids have a really safe, happy household, even more than any accolade I get in my business. So I wonder, in doing, providing those opportunities and doing those things that weren't done for me or couldn't have been done, not weren't done, my mom would have done anything. Am I setting her up for, it's this easy because I'm opening the doors, or will she have the ability to open the doors herself as I open them, as I go? You never know how to look or handle that. And you always, think about, whatever I can do for them, I will. But I got here without the help. That's kind of where I look at it, the perspective from, but I still will take her to everything I do. But Jen, I'm like, every word you said, I was like hanging on to, okay, I'm doing it. She's doing it too.
And to that point, I think it might make it easier in some regards, but I also think that, it will allow that generation, let's call it like 8 to 14, if other girls are getting it the same way, like to lift more people up than what we do right now. So that these calls, instead of being 12 of us right now or 50 of us, because there's more confidence and there's more ability to say, it might have been easier for me to go this way, but it also makes me easier to bring more people along than trying to figure it out as I go. So at least that's the story that I tell myself day over day when, as we know, that young ones are feisty. Yeah. You know what? I think it's just so important. And I think we'll be really impressed with what the children of 8 to 15 are doing when they're our ages, if we're fortunate enough to still see some of those pieces.
And the lifting up, as you shared that, was with the lifting up. I just was reminded of the great Janis Joplin's quote, "Don't compromise yourself. You're all you've got." And so it's like, lift up others. And stay true to you. Don't compromise yourself, because we're all we've got.
Even to Jen and Stephanie, as they just said that. So how important that they just shared that, because a lot of us here I don't have young children now in school, right? So even as women, I now have a better understanding. And even though I'm in education, I see it from a different perspective, but it's important that, like, as women here, we just heard from 2 women that it's a different journey for them right now in motherhood than, we've all had our phases of whatever history brought, but this is significant to have a young girl, in that age group right now. So I appreciate that share, because I don't know that I've heard from two moms.
And we're doing the same thing. Like even my daughter with her daughter, with the anxiety piece during COVID, my daughter, the same thing. So I love that. Like we kind of naturally came to sort of the same plan to move forward.
I agree with you completely. I've got teenagers, and from their perspective, they were like, Mom, you've taught us our values. You've taught us what we need to do. Now we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Support us when we make them and help us come up with decisions, but also trust us to make them as well too. And for me, that was very poignant to hear that from my teenager. That I think that today, kids, women, especially young women, they've got the information, they've got the tools available to them. They know how to seek out training, or we'll provide them those segues into that training. But mostly they've got the curiosity to try something different. That, as for myself, I also had male leaders as well too. That curiosity came with a little bit of fear of, oh, I can't do that. Oh, there's no way I'd be able to do that. And it's like, well, wait a second, do you have the information that you need? What tools are going to help you get there? And having that support behind it. So I think that the young women today following in our footsteps it's wonderful what's the opportunities are going to be. I can't wait to see how the world evolves.
Thank you so much, Deb. I really enjoyed that ending point. I know that we could sit and discuss the up and coming core competencies and skills and learnings of our women generations to come. But we'll close it out. I hope everyone has listening in or tuning in today has enjoyed these conversations. We're going to have everyone's LinkedIn handles in the podcast bio as well. So please reach out if anyone has spoken to you today. And I want to say thank you to all of our subscribers and the women that are aspiring to be leaders to come.
Great conversation, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye,
pulling
everyone.
it together, Ange.
My pleasure. Take care.
Lovely meeting
So
everyone.
great
Seeing
meeting
everyone
everyone.
meeting.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.